The moment Zachary Fletcher's calloused fingers brushed against the intricate braid woven down the left side of the orc woman's head, he knew he had made a terrible mistake. She gasped, her amber eyes going wide, her hand flying to the spot where his touch had lingered for barely a heartbeat. The firewood she had been carrying clattered to the forest floor, forgotten. For a long, suspended moment, neither of them moved, the autumn wind whispering through the pines around them, carrying the scent of wood smoke and approaching winter. "You just claimed me," she whispered, her voice trembling somewhere between shock and something else he could not quite identify. Zachary took an instinctive step backward, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had only been trying to help her, reaching out to free what he thought was a caught vine tangled in her hair as they both gathered wood in the forest that bordered his small homestead. He had not known. How could he have known? "I did not mean," he started, but she was already shaking her head, her expression shifting from shock to something more complicated, a mixture of emotions that flickered across her strong features too quickly for him to read. "It does not matter what you meant," she said, her voice gaining strength even as her hand remained pressed against the war braid. "In my clan, when a warrior's war braid is touched by another, it is a claim, a bond. You have claimed me as your mate." The words hung in the cool air between them like a pronouncement of doom. Zachary felt his mouth go dry. He had encountered the orc woman only 3 times before this moment, always in these woods that lay between his property and the wild borderlands where orc clans were known to roam. She had never spoken more than a handful of words to him, though their exchanges had been civil enough. More than civil, if he was honest with himself. There had been something in those brief encounters, a curiosity, a tentative friendliness that had surprised him given everything he knew about the tensions between their peoples. "There must be some way to undo it," Zachary said, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "I did not know about your customs." "It was an accident." The orc woman's jaw tightened, her small tusks catching the dappled sunlight that filtered through the forest canopy. She was tall, standing nearly eye to eye with him despite his own considerable height, her frame powerful and athletic beneath the worn leather and rough spun cloth she wore. Her green skin seemed to darken slightly, and he realized with a start that she might be blushing. "There is no undoing it," she said quietly. "Once a war braid is touched, the claim is made. If I return to my clan now, they will know. They will smell your scent on me, see the way the braid has been disturbed. They will demand to know who claimed me. And if you tell them it was an accident—" "That I did not know," she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They will not care. They will either demand you come and fulfill the bond, or they will declare me clanless for allowing a human to dishonor our traditions without consequence." She lowered her hand from the braid, her shoulders straightening as if she was preparing herself for battle. "My name is Cora, Cora of the Ironjaw clan, or at least I was." Zachary felt a wave of guilt crash over him. He had been living on this frontier homestead for 2 years now, trying to build a life far from the war-torn regions of the kingdom where he had served as a soldier. He had seen enough conflict, enough death. He had come here for peace, for simplicity. And now, with one careless gesture, he had apparently upended this woman's entire existence. "My name is Zachary Fletcher," he said, because it seemed important that she know it if they were somehow bound together now. "I have a homestead about a mile west of here. I raise sheep and grow what crops I can in this rocky soil." Cora studied him with those remarkable amber eyes, and he found himself unable to look away. There was intelligence there, and a fierce pride, but also something that might have been fear lurking beneath the surface. "I know who you are," she said finally. "I have watched you sometimes when I hunt in these woods. You work hard. You do not harm the forest. You leave offerings at the old stones, even though you are human and they are sacred to my people." Zachary felt heat rise to his face. He had not known he was being observed, though perhaps he should have guessed. The offerings he left were simple things: bread, honey, a cup of ale, but they were given out of respect for the land and whoever had lived here before him. His grandmother had taught him that all wild places had their guardians, and it was wise to honor them. "What happens now?" he asked, because someone had to address the impossible situation stretching out before them. Cora bent to gather her scattered firewood, her movements controlled but stiff, as if she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. "Now I must decide. I can return to my clan and face their judgment, knowing I will likely be cast out. Or—" she paused, not looking at him. "Or I can honor the claim. I can come with you and fulfill the bond as tradition demands." "But you do not know me," Zachary protested. "And I do not know you. How can we possibly—" "You think our people marry for love," Cora interrupted, finally meeting his gaze again. "Bonds are often made for strength, for alliance, for survival. Love, if it comes, comes later." She hefted the bundle of wood in her arms. "I am a practical woman, Zachary Fletcher. If I return to my clan, I lose everything. My sisters, my mother, my home. All because of an accident in the forest. But if I honor the claim, at least I have a chance at building something new." The logic was brutal and clear, but Zachary could not shake the feeling that he was trapping her into something neither of them wanted. "And if I refuse to hold you to this? If I simply let you go and tell your clan that I released you from any obligation?" "They will not believe you," Cora said bluntly. "They will think I am lying to protect my honor, or that you are a human trying to mock our traditions. Either way, I will be cast out." She squared her shoulders. "No, if this is to be my fate, I would rather face it with some agency in the matter. I choose to honor the claim, Zachary Fletcher. The question is, will you?" Zachary looked at her standing there in the forest, proud and strong despite the uncertainty that must have been churning inside her, and he felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders like a yoke. He had not asked for this. He had not wanted it. But he was not the kind of man who could walk away from someone in need, and whether Cora would admit it or not, she needed help now. "My home is small," he said slowly. "Just a cabin with 2 rooms. I have a loft where I sleep, and there is a bed near the hearth. You could have that if you came." "I would not," he stumbled over the words, feeling his face burn. "I would not expect anything from you, not until we knew each other better, if ever." Something flickered across Cora's face, an emotion he could not quite name. "You would offer me shelter without demanding the full rights of the claim." "I am not going to force myself on anyone," Zachary said firmly. "Accident or not, bond or not, I would hope we could find some way to make this work that does not make either of us miserable." For the first time since he had touched her braid, Cora's expression softened slightly. "You are strange for a human. The stories my clan tells about your kind do not include this sort of honor. And the stories my kind tells about orcs do not include women who gather firewood peacefully in the forest and leave game trails undisturbed so others can hunt," Zachary replied. "Perhaps we have both been listening to the wrong stories." The corner of Cora's mouth quirked upward, not quite a smile but close. "Perhaps." She adjusted her grip on the firewood. "Show me this homestead of yours, then. If I am to make it my home as well, I should see what I am agreeing to." They walked through the forest together, an unlikely pair, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions and uncertainties. Zachary led the way along paths he had worn into the earth over 2 years of living here, paths that wound between the ancient trees and over moss-covered stones. Cora followed, her footfalls surprisingly quiet for someone of her size and build, and he remembered that she had said she hunted in these woods. Of course she would know how to move silently. When they emerged from the tree line, his homestead spread out before them in the afternoon light. It was not much to look at: a sturdy log cabin with a stone chimney, a small barn that housed his dozen sheep and 2 goats, a chicken coop, and a well he had dug himself that first brutal summer. The garden plots were mostly harvested now, though a few late squash and turnips remained, and he had managed to get a few apple trees started, though they would not bear fruit for years yet. Cora was silent as she surveyed his property, and Zachary found himself oddly nervous about her assessment. He had been proud of what he had built here, carving a life out of the wilderness with his own 2 hands, but seeing it through her eyes made him aware of how humble it truly was. "The barn is well made," Cora said finally. "Good strong joints, properly sealed against the winter wind. Your fences need work, though. That eastern section will not hold if a wolf pack decides to test it." Zachary blinked, surprised by the practical nature of her observations. "I know. I have been meaning to reinforce it, but I have been busy with the harvest." "I can help with that," Cora said. "I am good with my hands, and I know wood and stonework." She glanced at him. "If I am to stay here, I will not be idle. I am a warrior and a hunter, but I am also a builder. My clan may cast me out, but they taught me well before this day." "I would welcome the help," Zachary admitted. "There is always more work than hours in the day, it seems." They approached the cabin, and he felt another surge of nervousness as he pushed open the door and gestured for her to enter. The interior was neat, but sparse: a table he had made himself, 2 chairs, a bed frame with a straw mattress near the hearth, shelves holding his few possessions and food stores, and a ladder leading up to the loft where he slept under the eaves. A fire burned low in the hearth, as he always left it when he went out, and the space smelled of wood smoke and the herbs he had hung from the rafters to dry. Cora had to duck slightly to enter, but once inside, she stood and turned slowly, taking in every detail. Her gaze lingered on the herbs, on the small shrine he had made on one shelf with a carved figure his grandmother had given him, on the battered books stacked carefully beside his bed. "You read," she said, and there was surprise in her voice. "When I can," Zachary replied. "I have only a handful of books, but I have read them many times over." "Do you?" Cora shook her head. "My clan keeps oral histories. We have shamans who remember the old stories and teach them to the young. I never learned the human script." There was no shame in her voice, only a statement of fact. "I could teach you if you wanted," Zachary offered. "It might help pass the winter evenings." Cora set her bundle of firewood down by the hearth, adding a few pieces to the fire with practiced efficiency. "The winter evenings," she repeated softly. "You are planning ahead, then." "You truly mean to let me stay?" "I said I would," Zachary replied. "I do not make promises I cannot keep." She straightened and turned to face him fully, her expression serious. "Then we should establish the terms of this arrangement, Zachary Fletcher. I will not live here as a prisoner or a burden. I will work, I will contribute, and I will expect to be treated as a partner in this household, not as property." "Agreed," Zachary said without hesitation. "And you will have privacy and respect. The bed by the hearth is yours." "I will remain in the loft unless you decide otherwise." Cora nodded slowly, and some of the tension seemed to drain from her shoulders. "Then we have an understanding. I will honor the claim that was made, and you will honor my agency within it. It is more than I had hoped for, if I am honest." "What will you tell your clan?" Zachary asked. "Or will you tell them anything at all?" "I must tell them something," Cora said. "If I simply disappear, they will assume the worst. They might even send warriors to look for me, thinking I was taken by force." She moved to the window, looking out toward the forest. "I will go back tomorrow morning. I will tell them that I have been claimed by a human, that I am honoring the bond, and that I am choosing this path. They will not like it, but they will accept it according to our laws. Will you be safe?" The question came out more urgently than Zachary had intended, and Cora glanced back at him with a flicker of surprise. "Safe enough," she said. "My mother is a respected elder. She will not let anyone harm me, though she will likely disown me once she understands what has happened. My sisters—" Her voice faltered slightly. "They will be disappointed. They will think I have thrown away my place in the clan for a human." Zachary heard the pain beneath her carefully controlled words. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I wish I could undo what I did." "Do not apologize again," Cora said, but her tone was not unkind. "What is done is done. We move forward from here, not backward." She turned from the window. "For tonight, I should return to my clan as if nothing has changed. Tomorrow, I will make my announcement and gather my belongings. I will return here by midday." "I will have everything ready," Zachary promised. "Is there anything you need?" "Anything I should prepare?" Cora considered the question. "Space for my weapons and armor. I will not give up being a warrior, even if I am no longer part of my clan's war band. And I will need somewhere to store my herbs and medicines. I have some skill in healing." "There is room in the barn loft for your weapons," Zachary said. "And I can clear one of the shelves for your medicines. I have only basic remedies myself, so your knowledge will be valuable." "Good." Cora moved toward the door, then paused. "Thank you, Zachary Fletcher, for offering me a choice when you could have simply turned your back on the whole situation. It is more than many men would have done, human or orc." "I hope I can prove worthy of your trust," Zachary said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Cora's amber eyes held his for a long moment, and something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. Then she was gone, slipping out into the gathering twilight, moving toward the forest with the fluid grace of a predator returning to familiar territory. Zachary stood in the doorway watching until she disappeared among the trees, then turned back to his cabin with a sense that his entire life had just shifted onto a new and uncertain path. That night, he barely slept. He lay in his loft staring at the rough wooden beams above his head, listening to the sheep settling in the barn and the wind whistling around the eaves. His mind churned with questions and doubts. How would this arrangement truly work? Could two people from such different worlds really build any kind of life together? And perhaps most pressing, what happened when the rest of the human settlers in the area learned that he was harboring an orc woman? Because they would learn, eventually. The frontier was too small, too interconnected. Someone would see Cora, would recognize what she was, and then there would be trouble. The nearest settlement was a half-day's ride away, a rough collection of farms and homesteads clustered around a general store and a blacksmith. The people there were hardworking and generally decent, but they were also afraid. Afraid of orc raids, afraid of the unknown wilderness, afraid of anything that threatened the fragile security they had carved out of the borderlands. When dawn finally broke, Zachary rose with gritty eyes and a body that ached from tension rather than honest labor. He went through his morning chores mechanically, feeding the animals and checking the fences, his mind still circling around the impossible situation he found himself in. He spent the morning working on the eastern fence line that Cora had mentioned, reinforcing the posts and adding extra support, and tried not to watch the forest too obviously for signs of her return. She appeared just before noon, as promised, emerging from the trees with a large pack on her back and a bundled collection of weapons slung over one shoulder. She walked with her head high, her expression carefully neutral, but even from a distance, Zachary could see the tightness around her eyes that spoke of difficult conversations and painful farewells. He met her halfway across the cleared ground, and she allowed him to take the weapon bundle without protest, though she kept the pack on her own back. Up close, he could see that her eyes were slightly red, as if she had been fighting tears. "It is done," she said simply. "I am no longer Cora of the Ironjaw clan. I am just Cora now." "I am sorry," Zachary said, because what else could he say? "My mother wept," Cora continued, as if he had not spoken. "She said I was throwing away everything our family has built, all our honor and status. My eldest sister called me a traitor. My youngest sister would not even look at me." Her voice remained steady, but Zachary could hear the grief beneath it. "Only my mother's second mate spoke in my favor. She said that sometimes the spirits call us to walk paths we do not expect, and that there is no shame in following where they lead." "She sounds wise," Zachary offered. "She is. But even her words could not change what must happen. I am clanless now, cast out." Cora shifted the weight of her pack. "But I am also free to make my own choices, to build my own path. There is some power in that, I suppose." They walked back to the cabin together, and Zachary helped her carry her belongings inside. She had not brought much: her weapons and armor, a change of clothes, a collection of pouches that he assumed held her medicines and herbs, a rolled sleeping fur, and a small carved wooden box that she handled with particular care. "My grandmother made this," she explained when she saw him watching. "It holds the first braid I ever cut from my hair after my first battle. It is all I have left of my family now." Zachary felt the weight of that statement settle over the cabin. "You will always have a place here," he said, "for as long as you want it." Cora nodded, setting the box carefully on the shelf he had cleared for her. "I will hold you to that promise, Zachary Fletcher." She turned to survey the cabin again, and this time there was something more proprietary in her gaze, as if she was truly seeing it as her home rather than just a temporary shelter. "Now, show me what needs to be done. I am tired of grieving. I want to work." So they worked. Zachary showed her the rhythm of the homestead, the daily tasks that kept the small farm running. Cora proved to be exactly what she had claimed: a skilled worker with a practical mind and strong hands. She repaired the eastern fence in half the time it would have taken him alone, her knowledge of joinery and structural support clearly born from years of experience. She helped him finish harvesting the last of the garden, moving through the rows with efficient grace. And when evening came, she demonstrated her hunting skills by disappearing into the forest and returning less than an hour later with 2 fat rabbits already skinned and cleaned. "I know these woods better than you do," she said matter-of-factly as she prepared the rabbits for the cook-pot. "I have been hunting here since I was old enough to draw a bow. I can keep us supplied with fresh meat through the winter, and I know where to find herbs and roots that you probably do not even know are edible." "That will be valuable," Zachary admitted. "My hunting skills are passable at best. I usually rely on my chickens and goats for meat, and I trade with the nearest settlement for anything else." Cora paused in her work, her expression growing wary. "This settlement. How will they react when they learn I am here?" Zachary had been dreading this question. "Honestly, not well. There is a lot of fear about orcs in the human territories. There have been raids in the past, conflicts over land and resources. People see your kind as enemies, and your kind has never raided orc territories," Cora asked with a sharp edge to her voice. "Never taken our lands, never killed our people." "I am not defending it," Zachary said quickly. "I know there is wrong on both sides. I served in the king's army for 5 years. I saw what war does to everyone involved. That is why I came here, to get away from all of it." Cora's expression softened slightly. "You were a soldier then. I wondered about the scars." She gestured to his arms where several old wounds marked his skin. "What did you do in the war?" "I was a scout, mostly, and before that, a foot soldier. I saw a lot of death, dealt out my share of it too." Zachary met her eyes. "I am not proud of everything I did in those years, but I tried to do my duty without losing my humanity." "That is more than many can say on either side," Cora acknowledged. She returned to preparing the rabbits, her movements deft and sure. "We will have to be careful then. If your people fear orcs, my presence here could bring trouble to your door." "Let me worry about that," Zachary said. "This is my land and you are under my protection now. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." Cora glanced at him with something that might have been respect. "Brave words, but words will not stop a mob if they decide I am a threat." "Then we will deal with that if it happens," Zachary said firmly. "For now, let us just focus on getting through each day." They fell into a routine over the following weeks, learning to navigate around each other in the small space of the cabin, negotiating the strange intimacy of shared living. Cora kept to her bed by the hearth, and Zachary remained in his loft, but they took their meals together, worked side by side during the day, and gradually began to talk about more than just practical matters. Zachary learned that Cora had 3 sisters, all warriors, and that she had been training for combat since she was barely old enough to walk. She had earned her war braid at 16 after defending her clan's territory from a raiding party of humans, a fact that made Zachary wince but which she stated without particular pride or shame. She loved the forest, loved the feel of the wind in her hair, and the challenge of tracking game through difficult terrain. She had a dry sense of humor that surprised him with its sharpness, and she was more observant than anyone he had ever met, noticing tiny details that completely escaped his attention. Cora learned that Zachary had grown up on a small farm in the heartland, that he had enlisted in the army to escape a life that felt too small and too predetermined, and that he had deeply regretted that choice by the end of his 2nd year of service. She learned that he had a gift for growing things, that he could coax life from even the most stubborn soil, and that he spent hours carefully tending his small orchard, even though he might never see those trees bear fruit. She learned that he read poetry when he thought no one was watching, and that he had a surprisingly good singing voice that he only revealed when he was working alone in the barn. The first snow came early that year, dusting the homestead in white and forcing them both to spend more time indoors. It was during those long winter evenings that something began to shift between them. Zachary started teaching Cora to read, as he had promised, using his small collection of books and a piece of charcoal on flat stones to demonstrate the letters. Cora proved to be a quick study, her mind sharp and hungry for knowledge, and she approached learning with the same fierce determination she brought to every other task. One evening, as they sat close together by the hearth while Zachary helped her sound out a particularly difficult word, their shoulders brushed and both of them froze. It was such a small thing, barely worth noticing, but in that moment, it felt charged with significance. Cora slowly turned her head to look at him, and Zachary found himself meeting her amber eyes from mere inches away. "This is dangerous," Cora said softly, "this feeling that is growing between us." "I know," Zachary admitted. "I have been trying not to notice it." "I have as well." Cora did not move away, "but it is becoming harder to ignore." "We do not have to do anything about it," Zachary said, though even as he spoke the words, he knew they were becoming less true with each passing day. "We agreed this would be a practical arrangement." "We did," Cora agreed. "But life has a way of making fools of our plans." She reached up slowly, giving him plenty of time to pull away, and touched the side of his face with her hand. Her palm was warm and calloused from work, and Zachary found himself leaning into the touch despite all his reservations. "I do not want to hurt you," he said. "This situation is already complicated enough." "You will hurt me worse by pretending this is not happening," Cora replied. "I am no fool, Zachary Fletcher. I know what I feel. I have felt it growing for weeks now. Every time you smile at one of my jokes, every time you show me patience as I struggle with your human letters, every time you treat me like a person of worth rather than a monster to be feared." "I never saw you as a monster," Zachary said fiercely. "From the first moment we spoke, I saw only a woman trying to survive in a world that made no room for her. And I saw a man who chose kindness when he could have chosen cruelty," Cora said. "That is rarer than you might think in my experience." They sat there for a long moment, the firelight painting shadows across their faces, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between them. Then Cora withdrew her hand and turned back to the book, and the spell was broken, though not forgotten. Winter deepened, and with it, their connection. They did not speak again about the feelings that had been acknowledged that night by the fire, but they did not need to. It was there in the way Cora's eyes softened when she looked at him, in the way Zachary found excuses to work near her, in the comfortable silences that stretched between them. They were becoming something more than reluctant housemates, something that might have been called friends if not for the electric current of awareness that seemed to charge the air whenever they were close. The homestead thrived under their combined efforts. The fences were all repaired and reinforced. The barn was weatherproofed against the worst of the winter storms, and their food stores were better than Zachary had managed alone in either of his previous winters here. Cora's hunting kept them supplied with fresh meat, and her knowledge of wilderness survival meant they had access to resources Zachary had not even known existed. But it was not all peaceful. One day in late winter, a neighbor from the nearest settlement appeared at Zachary's door, a gruff farmer named Hugh Carver who had always been friendly enough in the past. He had come to trade for eggs, he said, and Zachary invited him in out of the cold without thinking. Hugh's eyes went wide when he saw Cora standing by the hearth, and his hand dropped instinctively to the knife at his belt. "What in the name of the gods is that thing doing in your house, Fletcher?" Zachary felt his jaw tighten. "That thing has a name. Her name is Cora, and she lives here." "Lives here?" Hugh's voice rose. "Have you lost your mind? That is an orc, Fletcher. A damned orc right here in your cabin." "I am aware of what she is," Zachary said, his voice dangerously calm, "and I am telling you that she is under my protection. She has done nothing to harm anyone, and she has been helping me run this homestead through the winter." "Helping you?" Hugh sputtered. "Orcs do not help humans. They kill us, they raid our farms, they steal our livestock. Everyone knows that." "Not everyone," Cora said quietly, speaking for the first time. "Not all of my people are raiders, just as not all of yours are murderers and thieves. Some of us simply want to live in peace." Hugh stared at her as if she had sprouted a second head. "It talks." "She talks," Zachary corrected sharply. "And I would appreciate if you showed her the same respect you would show any other person in my home." "Respect?" Hugh shook his head. "Fletcher, I do not know what game you are playing here, but this is going to end badly. When word gets out that you are harboring an orc, people are going to have questions. Dangerous questions." "Then let them ask," Zachary said. "Cora is staying. That is not up for debate." Hugh backed toward the door, his expression a mixture of anger and fear. "You are making a mistake, Fletcher. A big one. Do not come crying to the settlement when this blows up in your face." He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was heavy. Cora moved to the window, watching Hugh's retreating figure trudge through the snow toward the road. "He will tell others," she said. By tomorrow, everyone in the settlement will know I am here. Let them know, Zachary said, though his stomach was tight with worry. We have done nothing wrong. Wrong is a matter of perspective, Cora replied. To your people, my very existence here is wrong. And to my former clan, my choice to stay with you is a betrayal. We are caught between two worlds, Zachary, and neither one wants us. Zachary joined her at the window, standing close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Then we will build our own world, right here. Cora turned to look at him, and there was something vulnerable in her expression, a crack in her usual armor of confidence. Do you truly believe that is possible? I have to, Zachary said. Because the alternative is giving up, and I am not ready to do that. Are you? No, Cora said softly. No, I am not ready to give up either. The trouble came sooner than either of them expected. 3 days after Hugh's visit, a group of 5 men rode up to the homestead. Zachary recognized most of them from the settlement. Hugh was there, along with the blacksmith, a couple of farmers, and one of the merchants who ran the general store. They did not look friendly. Stay inside, Zachary told Cora as he saw them approaching. Let me handle this. They are here because of me, Cora protested. I should face them. They are here because of ignorance and fear, Zachary corrected. And I am not going to let you face a mob alone. Please, Cora, stay inside until I call for you. Reluctantly, she agreed, though he could see the tension in every line of her body as he stepped out to meet the men. They had dismounted and stood in a loose semicircle near his barn, their faces hard with suspicion. Fletcher, the blacksmith, a burly man named Owen Stone, spoke first. We need to talk about your house guest. There is nothing to talk about, Zachary replied evenly. Cora is living here of her own free will, and she has done nothing to harm anyone. That you know of, Hugh interjected. But how can you trust an orc? They are savages, Fletcher. Everyone knows that. I know no such thing, Zachary said. I know that Cora has worked harder than any hired hand I could have afforded, that she has contributed more to this homestead in a few months than I managed in 2 years on my own, and that she has shown me nothing but honesty and respect. And what exactly is the nature of your relationship with this creature? The merchant, a weaselly man named Thomas Grant, asked with a sneer. Some kind of unnatural arrangement. Zachary felt rage flare hot in his chest. Careful how you speak about her, Grant. You are on my property, and I will not tolerate that kind of talk. We are just concerned citizens, Owen said, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. We have families, Fletcher, children. How do we know this orc is not going to decide one night to go on a rampage? How do we know she is not scouting our settlement for a raid? Because if she wanted to do any of those things, she would have done them already, Zachary shot back. She has been here for months. In that time, she has not harmed anyone, has not stolen anything, has not done a single thing to justify your fear. Her existence justifies our fear, Hugh said flatly. Orcs and humans do not mix, Fletcher. It is against nature. Is it? Zachary challenged. Or is it just against your prejudices? Before anyone could answer, the cabin door opened and Cora stepped out. She had armed herself. Zachary saw with a sinking feeling she wore her leather armor and had her sword belted at her waist, though her hands were empty and held away from her weapons in a gesture of peace. If you have questions about me, ask me directly, Cora said, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. Do not make Zachary Fletcher defend me as if I cannot speak for myself. The men shifted uneasily, several of them taking half steps backward. Cora was an imposing figure, tall and muscular, her green skin and tusks marking her unmistakably as an orc. But she stood with dignity, her chin raised, meeting their stares without flinching. What do you want here? Owen asked after a tense moment. Why are you living with Fletcher? Because I have nowhere else to go, Cora said simply. I was cast out of my clan for honoring a bonding tradition that Zachary accidentally triggered. I could have died in the wilderness, or I could have accepted his offer of shelter. I chose to live. Is that so difficult to understand? You expect us to believe you are just some homeless refugee, Thomas scoffed. More likely you are a spy, gathering information about our defenses. What defenses? Cora asked with genuine puzzlement. You have a settlement with a few dozen people, no walls, no organized militia that I can see. If my clan wanted to raid you, they would not need a spy. They would simply ride in and take what they wanted. The blunt honesty of her words seemed to shake the men more than any protestation of innocence could have. They exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. She has a point, one of the farmers muttered. We are not exactly a fortress. That is not the issue, Hugh insisted. The issue is that we have an orc living in our midst, and that makes everyone uncomfortable. Then perhaps you should examine why that is, Zachary said. Because from where I stand, the only threat here is the one you are creating with your paranoia. We are not being paranoid, Owen said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. We are just being cautious. Caution is preparing for a threat, Cora said. What you are doing is persecution based on fear. I understand that fear. My people have it too about humans, but fear cannot be allowed to rule us, or we will never find any peace. The words hung in the cold air, and Zachary could see them hitting home, at least with some of the men. Owen's expression had softened, and one of the farmers was nodding slightly, but Hugh and Thomas still looked unconvinced. Fine words, Thomas said. But words are easy. Actions matter more. And the actions we have seen are a human man taking an orc woman into his home. That is not natural, Fletcher, no matter how you try to justify it. What Zachary and I do in our home is none of your concern, Cora said sharply. We have harmed no one. We have broken no laws, and we will continue to live our lives as we see fit, whether you approve or not. You have spirit, I will give you that, Hugh said grudgingly. But spirit does not change what you are, and what you are is a danger, whether you mean to be or not. Your people and ours have been enemies for generations. Then perhaps it is time to change that, Zachary said. Perhaps it is time for someone to take the first step toward something different. Cora and I did not choose this situation, but we are choosing how to respond to it. We are choosing to build something together, to prove that coexistence is possible. Is that really so threatening to you? The men were silent for a long moment. Then Owen sighed and shook his head. I do not know, Fletcher, I honestly do not know, but I do know that this is going to cause problems whether you want it to or not. He turned to the others. Come on, we have said our piece. What Fletcher does on his own land is his business. You cannot be serious, Thomas protested. You are just going to leave her here. What would you have us do? Owen challenged. Drag her off the property, kill her. We came here to talk, and we have talked. If Fletcher wants to risk his neck for an orc, that is his choice to make. Hugh looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he just shook his head in disgust. On your head be it, Fletcher. When this goes bad, do not expect any help from us. He mounted his horse and rode off without another word, Thomas following close behind. The remaining 3 men lingered a moment longer. For what it is worth, one of the farmers said quietly, I do not think you are doing the wrong thing. It is just going to be hard is all. People are set in their ways. I know, Zachary said, but thank you for saying it. When they were finally gone, Zachary turned to find Cora standing very still, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. You should not have defended me like that, she said, but her voice was shaking. You are going to make enemies of your own people. They were already my people's enemies in spirit if they could come here with such hate in their hearts, Zachary replied. He crossed the distance between them and gently took one of her fists in his hands, uncurling her fingers carefully. I meant what I said. We are building something different here, and I am not going to let fear and prejudice tear it down. Cora looked down at their joined hands, and when she met his eyes again, there were tears gleaming in her own. Why are you doing this? Why risk so much for me? Because you matter, Zachary said simply. Because you are worth defending. And because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about obligation or duty and became about something much more important. What? Cora whispered. Zachary took a breath, knowing that once he said the words, there would be no taking them back. It became about love. I love you, Cora. I do not know when it happened or how, but it is the truth. I love you. Cora's breath caught, and for a moment she looked utterly stunned. Then slowly, a smile spread across her face, transforming her features from something guarded and fierce into something open and radiant. I love you too, she said, her voice breaking on the words. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself this was just gratitude or convenience, but I cannot deny it anymore. I love you, Zachary Fletcher. He pulled her into his arms, and she came willingly, wrapping her strong arms around him and holding him as if she would never let go. They stood there in the cold winter air, two people from different worlds who had found something precious in each other, something worth fighting for. That night, things changed between them. Zachary descended from his loft, and Cora welcomed him into her bed by the hearth. They came together with a tenderness that surprised them both, learning each other's bodies with the same careful attention they had brought to learning each other's minds and hearts. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, only a deep sense of rightness, as if they had always been meant to find their way to this moment. Afterward, they lay tangled together under Cora's sleeping furs, the firelight painting patterns across their skin. Cora traced the scars on Zachary's chest with gentle fingers, and he ran his hands through her hair, carefully avoiding the war braid that had started everything. I can touch it now, you know, Cora said softly, following his gaze. The claim has been fully accepted. You are my mate and I am yours. Does that change anything? Zachary asked. It changes everything, Cora replied, and nothing at all. We were already walking this path. The braid was just the first step. I am glad I took it, Zachary said. Even if I did not know what I was doing at the time. Cora laughed, the sound rich and warm. Perhaps the spirits guided your hand. My mother's second mate would say that there are no true accidents, only the will of the world making itself known. Then I am grateful to the spirits, Zachary said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and for the first time since Cora had come to the homestead, both of them slept deeply and peacefully, without the weight of uncertainty pressing on their hearts. Winter gave way to early spring, and with it came new challenges. The settlement continued to regard Cora with suspicion, though no more delegations appeared at the homestead. Zachary made his regular trips to the general store for supplies, and each time he faced cold stares and whispered conversations that cut off when he approached. But he endured it, refusing to be ashamed of the life he had chosen. Cora, for her part, threw herself into preparing the homestead for the growing season. She helped Zachary turn the soil in the garden plots, her strength making the work go twice as fast. She repaired and expanded the chicken coop, giving them space for more birds. And she began teaching him the hunting and tracking skills she had learned from her clan, passing on knowledge that had been generations in the making. One day, as they worked together to prune the young apple trees, Cora said thoughtfully, I have been thinking about the future. What about it? Zachary asked, carefully cutting away a dead branch. "About what we are building here. It is not just a homestead, is it? It is a statement. A demonstration that our peoples can live together." "I suppose it is," Zachary agreed. "Then perhaps we should make that statement even clearer," Cora said. She turned to face him fully. "In my clan, when a bonding is made permanent, there is a ceremony. The couple stands before witnesses and pledges their lives to each other. It is a sacred thing, binding not just in this world but in the spirit realm as well." Zachary's heart began to beat faster. "Are you asking what I think you are asking?" "I am asking if you would be willing to participate in such a ceremony with me," Cora said. "I know we cannot do it according to the full traditions of my people. I have no clan to witness it. But perhaps we could create our own tradition. Invite those from the settlement who might be willing to come. Show them that what we have is real and lasting." "A wedding," Zachary said, testing the word. "If that is what your people call it, then yes. A wedding." Cora's expression was hopeful but uncertain. "Would you want that?" "More than anything," Zachary said without hesitation. He set down his pruning knife and took both her hands in his. "Cora, I would be honored to stand before any gods or spirits or people and declare that you are my mate, my partner, my wife. Yes, I want that." Cora's face lit up with joy, and she pulled him into a fierce embrace. "Then we will make it happen. We will show everyone that love is stronger than fear." Planning the ceremony became a project that consumed them both. Cora wanted to honor the traditions of her people as much as possible, which meant incorporating elements that were foreign to Zachary, but which he learned with eager attention. She taught him the words of the Orc bonding pledge, helping him practice the harsh, guttural syllables of her language until he could recite them without stumbling. She explained the significance of each part of the ceremony, from the exchange of braids to the mixing of blood to the final blessing. Zachary, in turn, introduced elements from his own culture. He made simple rings from copper wire, not having access to anything more precious, and he wrote vows in his own language that spoke of his commitment and love. He also took on the daunting task of inviting witnesses from the settlement. The first person he asked was Owen Stone, the blacksmith who had seemed the most reasonable during the confrontation that winter. Owen was clearly surprised by the invitation, but after some thought, he agreed to come. "I will not lie to you, Fletcher," Owen said. "Most folks still think you are crazy for taking up with that orc. But I have seen you around the settlement these past months, and you seem happy. Happier than I ever saw you before. If she is the cause of that, then I suppose I can stand witness to your union." It was not a ringing endorsement, but it was something, and Zachary was grateful for it. A handful of others from the settlement also agreed to come. The farmer who had spoken kindly before, a young couple who were new to the area and had no history with orc conflicts, and surprisingly, the wife of one of the men who had ridden with Hugh. She came to the homestead herself to tell them she would attend. "My husband thinks I am mad," she said frankly. "But I saw the way you two looked at each other when you faced down that group of men. That was real love. Anyone with eyes could see it. And I am not about to let my husband's prejudices stop me from witnessing something beautiful." The ceremony was set for the first day of summer, when the sun was high and the land was green and full of life. Zachary and Cora spent the days leading up to it making preparations, cleaning the homestead until it shone, preparing food for the small gathering, and readying themselves for the commitment they were about to make. On the morning of the ceremony, Zachary woke with butterflies churning in his stomach. Cora was already awake, sitting by the hearth and carefully rebraiding her war braid with new leather cords dyed in the colors of her former clan. It was her way of honoring her heritage, she had explained, even though she was no longer part of it. Nervous, she asked without looking up. Terrified, Zachary admitted, but in a good way. I as well, Cora said. She finished the braid and turned to face him. I never thought I would have this. After I was cast out, I thought I had lost my chance at a true bonding. But here we are. Here we are, Zachary echoed. He crossed to her and took her hands. Ready to make this official, more than ready, Cora said. The ceremony was held outdoors, in the clearing between the cabin and the barn where the land was level, and there was room for the small group of witnesses to gather. Zachary and Cora had constructed a simple arch from young willow branches, decorating it with early summer flowers and herbs that held significance in Orc tradition. It was beautiful in its simplicity, a symbol of the life they were building together. The witnesses arrived at midday, about a dozen people in total, more than Zachary had dared hope for but fewer than he had wished. Owen Stone was there, along with the others who had promised to come, and to Zachary's surprise, a few more who had apparently decided to attend at the last moment. They stood in a loose semicircle, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical to genuinely warm. Cora wore her finest clothes leather armor that had been polished until it gleamed, decorated with beadwork and feathers in the style of her clan. Her war braid hung prominently down the left side of her head, the new cords bright against her green skin. She looked like a warrior queen, fierce and proud and beautiful. Zachary wore his best shirt and trousers, simple but clean, and he had taken care to shave and comb his hair. He felt plain next to Cora's magnificence, but when she looked at him, her eyes were full of admiration. They had asked Owen to officiate, as the closest thing to a neutral party they could find, and the blacksmith cleared his throat awkwardly as he stood before them under the willow arch. We are gathered here today to witness the bonding of Zachary Fletcher and Cora, formerly of the Ironjaw clan, Owen began, his voice carrying across the clearing. This is an unusual union, I will not pretend otherwise. But love is a strange and powerful force, and it does not always follow the paths we expect. He glanced between them. I believe you have words you want to speak to each other. Zachary nodded, his throat suddenly tight with emotion. He turned to face Cora fully, taking her hands in his. Cora, when you came into my life, I did not know what to expect. I certainly did not expect to find my other half, the person who would make me feel complete in ways I did not even know I was lacking. But that is what you have become to me. You are my partner, my strength, my heart. I promise to honor you, to protect you, to stand beside you through whatever challenges we face. I promise to love you for all the days of my life. Cora's eyes were shining with unshed tears, but her voice was steady as she replied. Zachary Fletcher, you gave me hope when I had none. You gave me a home when I had lost everything. But more than that, you gave me your heart, freely and without reservation. You have shown me that honor and kindness are not bound by the color of one's skin or the shape of one's tusks. You have taught me what true partnership means. I promise to stand with you, to fight for you, to build a life with you that honors both our peoples. I promise to love you with all the strength of my warrior's heart in this world and whatever lies beyond. They exchanged the copper rings Zachary had made, slipping them onto each other's fingers with reverent care. Then Cora produced a small knife, and with Owen's nervous approval, they each made a small cut on their palms and pressed their hands together, mingling their blood in the Orc tradition. By blood we are bound, Cora said in her own language, then repeated it in the common tongue for the witnesses. What the spirits have joined, let no one tear apart. By blood we are bound, Zachary repeated, feeling the sting of the cut and the warmth of Cora's hand against his. Now and forever. Owen looked a bit pale at the blood ritual, but he rallied and said, Then by the authority vested in me by this community, and by the power of the love clearly evident between you, I declare you bonded mates. You may seal your union." Zachary pulled Cora close and kissed her, and she kissed him back with a passion that drew a few gasps and a couple of scattered cheers from the witnesses. When they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. The celebration that followed was small but genuine. Cora had hunted a deer the previous day, and they roasted it over an open fire, sharing the meat with their guests along with bread, vegetables from their garden, and a cask of ale that Owen had contributed. People began to relax as the afternoon wore on, the initial awkwardness giving way to curiosity and even friendliness. Several of the witnesses approached Cora to speak with her directly, asking about her life and her people with genuine interest rather than fear. Cora answered their questions with patience, and Zachary could see the walls beginning to come down on both sides. It was not a miracle transformation. There were still those who kept their distance, still those who watched with suspicion, but it was a start. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the homestead, Owen approached Zachary and Cora with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Fletcher, I came here today expecting to witness something strange and probably doomed to failure," the blacksmith said. "But I have to admit I was wrong. What you two have is real. I can see that now. And maybe, just maybe, there is hope for more understanding between our peoples after all." "That is all we can ask for," Zachary said, gripping Owen's hand in thanks. "Understanding and the chance to build something better." "You have earned that chance," Owen agreed. He nodded to Cora. "Take care of him, and Fletcher, you take care of her. You have both taken on a difficult path." "We will take care of each other," Cora said. "That is what mates do." As the guests departed and twilight deepened into night, Zachary and Cora stood together watching the last of them disappear down the road toward the settlement. They were alone again, but it felt different now. They were not just two people making the best of an impossible situation. They were partners, bound by choice and love and the promises they had made. "Come to bed, husband," Cora said, testing out the word with a smile. "We have a long life ahead of us, but tonight is ours to celebrate." "Lead the way, wife," Zachary replied. And together they walked back into their cabin, into the home they had built, into the future they would face side by side. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. The homestead continued to thrive under their combined efforts, growing from a simple subsistence farm into a prosperous holding. Zachary's apple trees finally bore fruit in their 5th year together, and the sweetness of that first harvest brought tears to both their eyes. Cora's hunting and tracking skills kept them well supplied with meat and furs, which they traded in the settlement for goods they could not produce themselves. Relations with the settlement improved slowly but steadily. More people began to accept Cora's presence, won over by her work ethic, her knowledge, and the undeniable evidence that she meant no harm. A few even came to Zachary and Cora with questions about orc culture, genuine curiosity replacing fear. Cora answered them all, becoming an unexpected bridge between two worlds that had been enemies for too long. In their 7th year together, Cora gave birth to a daughter. The pregnancy had been difficult, as pregnancies between humans and orcs were rare and often dangerous, but both mother and child survived. They named her Zara, blending sounds from both their cultures, and she was beautiful green-skinned like her mother but with Zachary's brown eyes and gentle features. Her tusks were small and delicate, and her ears were slightly pointed but not as dramatically as a full-blooded orc's. The birth of their daughter marked a turning point in the settlement's attitude. Children had a way of softening hearts, and when people saw Zachary carrying his baby girl into the general store, saw the way he doted on her with such obvious love, Even the most hardened skeptics began to reconsider their positions. Zara became a symbol of hope, proof that the barriers between humans and orcs were not insurmountable. By the time Zara was walking and talking, mixing words from both her parents' languages with cheerful abandon, other families in the settlement had begun to reach out to Zachary and Cora with true friendship. They were invited to harvest celebrations and winter festivals. Cora was asked to teach tracking skills to some of the settlement's younger hunters. Zachary found himself serving as an informal mediator when disputes arose, his experience living between two cultures giving him a unique perspective. One evening, when Zara was 5 years old and playing happily in the cabin while her parents prepared dinner, Cora said thoughtfully, "Do you remember the day you touched my war braid?" Zachary laughed. "How could I forget? I thought my life was over." "In a way it was," Cora said. "The life you had been living ended that day, but a new and better one began." She stirred the pot hanging over the hearth, then glanced at him with a soft smile. "I am grateful every day for your careless hands and your kind heart." "And I am grateful for your courage," Zachary replied, crossing to wrap his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You could have given up, could have let bitterness consume you, but instead you chose to build something new." "We chose to build something new," Cora corrected. "Neither of us could have done this alone." They stood there together, watching their daughter play, and Zachary felt a profound sense of contentment settle over him. The path that had begun with an accidental touch in the forest had led him here, to this moment of perfect domestic peace. It had not been easy, and there had been times when he had doubted whether they would make it through. But they had persevered, and in doing so, they had created something precious: a family, a home, a future. Years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the steady rhythm of farm life. Zara grew into a strong, confident girl who moved easily between the human settlement and the wider world, her mixed heritage making her a natural diplomat. Other children, both human and the occasional orc from the borderlands, came to play at the homestead, drawn by Zara's friendly nature, and by the reputation Zachary and Cora had built as people who welcomed all. One day, when Zara was 12, a group of orc warriors appeared at the homestead. Zachary felt his heart clench with old fear, but Cora stepped forward without hesitation, her head held high. "I greet you, warriors of the Ironjaw clan," she said in her native tongue. "What brings you to my home?" The leader of the group, a scarred female orc with gray streaking her hair, studied Cora for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she bowed her head slightly in respect. "Cora, daughter of Greta, sister of Mara and Kenna and Bryn, we come bearing a message from your mother." Cora's face went still, and Zachary moved to stand beside her, offering silent support. "Speak your message," Cora said, her voice carefully controlled. "Your mother is dying," the warrior said bluntly. "She has maybe a season left, perhaps less. She asks that you come to her before the end, so that she may see you once more and meet the family you have built." Tears sprang to Cora's eyes, and she swayed slightly. Zachary caught her arm, steadying her. "I was cast out," Cora said. "I am clanless. Why would she ask for me now?" "Because you are still her daughter," the warrior replied. "Because she has watched from afar as you built a bridge between our peoples. Because she is proud of you, though she was too stubborn to admit it before now. She asks that you come, and she asks that you bring your mate and your child so that she may see what her bloodline has become." Cora looked at Zachary, her eyes pleading. "Will you come with me? I cannot face them alone." "Of course I will come," Zachary said without hesitation. "We will all go. If your mother wants to meet our family, then she will meet all of us." The journey to the Ironjaw clan's territory took 3 days, guided by the orc warriors who had brought the message. It was Zachary's first time so deep in the borderlands, and he could not help but feel tense as they traveled through terrain that grew progressively wilder and more remote. But the warriors treated them with respect, and Zara was fascinated by everything, asking 100 questions about orc culture and customs that the warriors answered with surprising patience. When they finally arrived at the Ironjaw camp, a sprawling collection of sturdy tents and semi-permanent structures nestled in a valley between two hills, Zachary felt hundreds of eyes turned toward them. He held Zara's hand tightly, and Cora walked with her shoulders squared, every inch the warrior she had been trained to be. They were taken to a large tent at the center of the camp, and inside, on a bed of furs, lay an old orc woman. She was gaunt with illness, her green skin faded to a sickly olive, but her eyes were sharp and bright as they fixed on Cora. "Daughter," the old woman said, her voice hoarse but strong. "You came." "Mother," Cora replied, and her voice broke on the word. She rushed forward and knelt beside the bed, taking the old woman's hand in hers. "I am here." "Let me see them," Cora's mother said. "Let me see the human who claimed you and the child you bore together." Zachary stepped forward with Zara, and they stood where the old woman could see them clearly. Her gaze traveled over them both with keen intensity, and Zachary forced himself to meet her eyes steadily, refusing to show fear. "You are the one," the old woman finally said. "The one who touched her war braid." "I am," Zachary confirmed. "It was an accident, but I do not regret the consequences. Cora has been the greatest blessing of my life." "And you, child," the old woman said, turning her attention to Zara. "What do they call you?" "Zara," the girl said, her voice clear and unafraid. "And I am proud to be the granddaughter of Greta of the Ironjaw clan if you will claim me." The old woman's eyes widened, and then, to everyone's surprise, she laughed a raspy, painful sound, but genuine. Brave words from a small one. "You have your mother's spirit," she looked back at Cora. "I was wrong to cast you out, I see that now. You have built something remarkable, daughter, something that brings honor to our family and hope to our people." "You were protecting the clan," Cora said, tears streaming down her face. "I understood, even if it hurt." "I was protecting my own pride," Greta corrected. "I was too afraid of change, too set in the old ways. But watching you from afar, seeing what you have accomplished, has taught me that change is not always something to fear. Sometimes it is exactly what we need." She reached out a shaking hand toward Zachary. "Human, I thank you for caring for my daughter when I could not. I thank you for showing her that love can bridge any divide." Zachary took the old woman's hand carefully, mindful of how frail she had become. "I am the one who should thank you for raising such a remarkable daughter. She has taught me more about courage and honor than I ever learned in all my years of soldiering." Greta nodded slowly, then beckoned for Zara to come closer. "Little one, I do not have much time left in this world. But I want you to know that you are a child of two peoples, and that is a gift, not a burden. You carry the strength of the orcs and the adaptability of the humans. Use those gifts well and you will change the world." "I will, grandmother," Zara promised solemnly. "I will make you proud." They stayed with the Ironjaw clan for 2 weeks, until Greta passed peacefully in her sleep with Cora holding her hand. The clan held a warrior's funeral for their elder, and to Zachary's surprise, he and Zara were welcomed to participate in the ceremonies. Several of Cora's sisters approached them during those days, awkward at first but gradually warming as they got to know their brother-in-law and niece. On the last night before they returned home, Cora's youngest sister, Bryn, pulled Zachary aside. "Thank you for bringing her back," she said quietly. "Even if only for a little while, It meant everything to our mother, and it means a lot to the rest of us too. Maybe one day we can visit your homestead, see what you have built there." "You would be welcome any time," Zachary said sincerely. "Our door is always open to family." The journey home felt different than the journey out. They carried grief with them, certainly, but also a sense of completion, of old wounds being healed. Cora seemed lighter despite her sadness, as if a weight she had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. When they finally crested the last hill and saw their homestead spread out before them in the valley, all three of them stopped for a moment just to look. It was not much, still just a cabin and a barn and some fields, but it was theirs, built with their own hands and their own sweat. It was a symbol of everything they had overcome and everything they had achieved together. "Home," Cora said softly, and there was so much love in that single word that Zachary felt his throat tighten. "Home," he agreed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders and pulling Zara close with the other. "Let us go home." They descended the hill together as the sun set behind them. Three figures silhouetted against the golden light, a human man, an orc woman, and their daughter who belonged to both worlds and would help build a bridge between them. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities, and though challenges would surely come, they would face them as they had faced everything else. Together, with love and courage and an unwavering commitment to the life they had chosen. The accidental touch that had changed everything had led them here, to this moment of peace and belonging. And standing on the threshold of their home, surrounded by the people he loved most in the world, Zachary knew with absolute certainty that he would not change a single moment of the journey that had brought them to this place. Cora's wore braid, now streaked with gray after all these years, still hung down the left side of her head, a reminder of where they had started and how far they had come. Sometimes, when they lay together in the darkness, Zachary would run his fingers gently over that braid, and Cora would smile and pull him close, grateful every day for the accident that had claimed her heart and given her a home. Their story became legend in both communities over time. Children grew up hearing about the human farmer and the orc warrior who had built a life together against all odds. Other mixed couples began to appear, encouraged by Zachary and Cora's example. Trade routes opened between human settlements and orc clans. Old enmities did not disappear overnight, but they began to fade, replaced slowly by understanding and cooperation. Zachary and Cora lived to see their daughter grow into a strong woman who chose to dedicate her life to diplomacy and bridge building between their peoples. They lived to see grandchildren, a whole new generation of children who would never know the fierce hatreds that had divided their grandparents' worlds. They lived to see the homestead they had built become a place of pilgrimage for those seeking proof that love could triumph over prejudice. And through it all, through the triumphs and the setbacks, the joys and the sorrows, they stood together as they had promised to do on that summer day so many years ago. Partners, mates, two souls who had found each other through chance and chosen each other through love. When they were old and gray, and their hands had grown gnarled with arthritis, but still reached for each other every morning, Cora would sometimes laugh and say, "To think this all started because you could not keep your clumsy hands to yourself." And Zachary would pull her close and reply, "Best mistake I ever made." And it was true. Every word of it was true.